guys, so it's been 4 years since I had a proper disease outbreak on the farm. And the last time I had a proper disease outbreak on the farm, it was quite devastating. I had what we call fall typhoid. That's like typhoid fever, but in chickens, yeah? So the causative agent is actually salmonella, the same salmonella that causes typhoid in humans, but of course, just a different variant. This is one that's available for poultry. That time, it was really devastating. I had invested quite an amount of money in a flock, and that flock got sick. And I think at about 26 weeks or so, I don't remember the exact age, I had to sell off the birds. I had invested quite an amount of money and I ended up losing a lot of money. And it was so painful, very, very painful. At that point, I was utilizing a chicken house, and at the top floor is where I'd kept my chickens at, and then I gave my dad to, raise his chickens in the bottom floor. I can't really say that he's the one that brought the disease in, because honestly, I would never know. But I certainly did make some mistakes at that particular point. And now it's 4 years later, I haven't had a disease outbreak on the farm, and I can guarantee you that it's not a mistake that I haven't had a disease outbreak on the farm. I know very few farmers who over that period, especially in my country over here, they don't get poultry diseases, because here in Uganda, a lot of people keep chickens. A lot of people, raise poultry, they keep chickens around their homes, actually even farming like on a commercial level. It might be just a few chickens, but they do it on a commercial level. Yeah, they do keep chickens over here in Uganda. And so I have implemented a few things on my farm that have ensured that I don't have diseases coming onto the farm. Yeah, that's just why I'm strict with it, because it kept me out of business for some time. I can guarantee you that if I had actually not lost that flock of birds, I would certainly be way ahead. I mean, if everything else had been kept constant, I would most certainly be ahead right now in my farming path. Currently, I have 12,000 chickens. Maybe I would have been at, 15,000 or 14,000 or 17,000. I don't know, who knows? But the one thing that I can tell you for certain is that that disease outbreak kept me back. It really, really kept me back. And for a lot of farmers in my country and beyond, the goal is to ensure that you don't have diseases on a farm. Now, I occasionally have I would call them a little flares, just a bit of a flare of signs of a disease outbreak on a farm, and then we manage to handle it. Why? Because both I and the farm manager and the staff that work on the farm actually quite keen when it does come to observing the flocks. And I love that. I really, really love that. He's very keen when it does come to managing and observing the flocks and everything. And then, I also ensure that he has everything that he needs, everything that he does require to ensure that we don't have any disease outbreaks on the farm. And that has really, really helped us. Yeah, that is one thing that has really helped us. So what are the two main ways in which you prevent diseases from coming onto a farm? Number one is vaccination. Number two is biosecurity. Yeah, I'll talk about the first one briefly. Yeah, so the first one is vaccination. So vaccination, I mean, you guys understand vaccines. I remember when COVID came around, there was a lot of, I would say, a lot of noise being made on whether people should be vaccinated or not. And honestly, I don't think I'm qualified at the moment to talk about that. The one thing that I do know, though, is that vaccines do work. I'm a medical doctor by profession, and I understand how vaccines work. Yeah. Now, I don't know whether the vaccine for COVID was really necessary. I don't know whether it should have been given. I'm not an expert on that. But when it does come to chickens, the vaccines do work. Guys, this is our tank stand. You guys can see it. Very beautiful. So it has two tanks at the top. Those are two 10,000 liter tanks. So that's a 20,000 liter tank. So we just pump the water goes up the tanks, and then after that, it moves down the farm, yeah, to supply the rest of the farm, which is this side. Yeah, so it goes through the banana plantation and then the chicken houses, which are at the bottom. Yeah. So anyway, when we don't vaccinate our chickens, I've seen a lot of farmers who actually don't vaccinate their chickens, and whenever they choose to not vaccinate their chickens, they get disease outbreaks. Once in a while, you might be lucky. I've occasionally met farmers who tell you that, hey, I haven't vaccinated my flock, and I had this flock come in, I haven't vaccinated it, and it hasn't gotten sick. I'm like, whoa, thank God. I mean, praise your Lord. I mean, go and give a burnt offering unto the Lord. Yeah, especially considering the country that I'm in now. If you're in those countries where not a lot of people keep chickens, you are more likely to be safe. Not very safe though, because birds of the air also transmit these diseases. Yeah, so for example, the small little tiny birds, they transmit Newcastle disease, and they move distances. It could move from Uganda to South Africa. It could move from Uganda to Europe. They are the ones that transmit a lot of these diseases, yeah? So if someone tells me that, hey, I've been lucky enough to not have a disease outbreak on my farm, I'll be like, well, go and thank your God, yeah? But I know that vaccines actually do work, because every time I've tried to not compromise with vaccinations on the farm, and we always ensure we vaccinate our chickens. I have 12,000 chickens on the farm, and what would happen if they get, sick? That would be very, very terrible. If I lose all of them due to a disease, no, that would be very terrible. So there are different types of vaccines. I don't think that's something that I'm going to be going into right now, to try and explain to you guys the different types of vaccines. But there are vaccines that can be given through water, nasal droplets or injections into the wings, into the muscles. There are different routes for vaccinating chickens, yeah? So that is the first thing. Always ensure that your chickens are vaccinated. And one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of farmers make when it does come to vaccinations is that they don't implement the vaccination the correct way. What does that mean? They don't handle the vaccines correctly. First of all, when you get a vaccine, you need to make sure that you get it from the right source, someone that you trust, someone you can guarantee that you trust, that this person has the correct vaccines. That's number one. Number two, after getting the vaccine from the correct source, you need to make sure that you transport it the correct way. So it must be transported when it's cold. Vaccines are usually kept between 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. So always transport the vaccine when it's cold. Number three, always administer the vaccine the right way. Yeah. So if you don't administer the vaccine the right way, you could end up failing. So if you administer a vaccine that's supposed to be in drinking water, you administer it in warm water, it's not going to work. Yeah, it should be, normal room temperature water, something like that. Yeah, or even cool water. You should administer it in water like that. If you administer it in the wrong way, you keep it around or in the chicken house for a wrong amount of time, it's not going to work. Yeah. So the goal is that you need to make sure that the vaccine is administered the correct way. Give it to the chickens the correct way. If the vaccine is supposed to be given into the muscle and then you give it subcutaneous, it's not going to work. It certainly won't work. So you need to make sure that you understand how to administer the vaccine. That's how the vaccine is going to work. And before that, also you need to make sure that you store the vaccine the correct way. I've seen people, because they go to a shop and they buy a vaccine and they are given that vaccine in ice. Yeah, because the way we transport vaccines, that since we're going to be transporting it and we don't have freezers to transport it or a fridge or something like that, they give you a cooler box and then they put ice around it and put the vaccine inside the ice. Then you transport it. So now what a lot of people do is that since they have given them the vaccine to transport in ice, they're like, oh, so I'm not going to vaccinate today, I'll vaccinate tomorrow. When they reach their home, they keep the vaccine in the freezer. Terrible. Remember that you're supposed to keep the vaccine between 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. The freezer is 0 or below 0 degrees Celsius. For something to freeze, it must be 0 or below 0 degrees Celsius. So if you keep your vaccine below 0 degrees Celsius, you could have completely messed it up. Yeah. So always ensure that you transport and keep your vaccines between 2 to 8 degrees. Now, when you transport your vaccine in ice, the vaccine itself is not at 0 degrees, because remember, it's the ice, the one surrounding it, that's at 0, yeah, or below 0. So what that ice does is that it ensures that the environment around the ice is actually kept between 2 to 8 degrees. So as you can tell, it doesn't matter how much you keep ice around that vaccine can never freeze, because the vaccine itself never gets to 0 degrees Celsius. Yeah. So if you transport things or keep things at below 0 degrees Celsius or keep your vaccine below 0 degrees Celsius, it will not work. So I've seen a lot of people make those mistakes and then they start complaining, okay? So that's one thing. But the second thing, which is actually the more important thing that I have implemented on the farm to prevent diseases from coming onto the farm, is called proper biosecurity. So proper biosecurity are like the things we do and not do to ensure that, we don't introduce diseases on the farm, yeah? And this is one thing where I've currently try to be as strict as possible. It's the main reason that I do fence my farm. Yeah, so my farm is fenced on. It's on a 3-acre piece of land, and it's all fenced. And it is very important to me that it is fenced. I invested quite an amount of money in fencing it, but well, I still had to fence it. Why? Because number one, if you have things coming from the outside and bring diseases onto the farm, like chickens, other birds, turkeys moving around and coming around the chicken house, because since this is a poultry farm, you're going to have like poultry feed, littering in a few places, and you can see that I'm in a plantation. Of course, inside the plantation, there's going to be worms and things like that. So people's local chickens around, turkeys and all those kinds of things will want to come and scavenge from inside here. Yeah. So if you don't pay attention to that and try to ensure that, you maintain the farm the correct way, you're going to get into trouble. You're going to get into terrible trouble because they're going to come in and bring for you diseases. Other people are going to walk in and bring for you diseases. So I try to maintain biosecurity. Like I've said, biosecurity are the things we do or the things we don't do to ensure that we don't have diseases being introduced physically onto the farm. So some of the things that I do are like overalls. As you guys can see, I'm dressed in an overall and gumboots. You can see the gumboots, green gumboots over there. So while moving around, we are moving around in overalls and gumboots. When I go to my home, I'm not wearing, these overalls and gumboots. When we enter the chicken houses, we are wearing the right attire, the right clothing to ensure that, we don't have diseases being introduced into the farm. When the guys are going to enter the chicken houses, you can see, the chicken houses right here. They're all wearing their overalls, their gumboots. They don't go outside to play football with these overalls and gumboots. They don't interact with other people with this clothing. Yeah. Some of the other things are things like ensuring that, every chicken house has its own staff working inside there and they're not working in other areas. I don't allow visitors onto the farm. I even have, a marking on the gate telling them that, if you come from outside and you want to enter the farm, you're going to be given a fine. Yeah, they all know that. Yeah? I don't want people to come from the outside of the farm to enter the farm because they're going to introduce diseases for me on the farm. Yeah, very bad. It's going to cause me issues and I totally don't accept that. Yeah, so there are a few particular rules that I consistently implement on the farm. We implement these rules on the farm to make sure that we don't have any trouble when it does come to, possibly introducing diseases on the farm. Yeah, a lot of people have written, asking me to come and do internships. That's something that I'm certainly going to accept at a particular point, but I'm still pessimistic about it because I know I'm putting my farm at a risk. Now, I know it's a good thing, especially giving back to the community, trying to train some people about what we do right here. But then it's also risky. Yeah, so I really don't know how to go ahead with it. The only way I can go ahead with it is if I have built some accommodation for the interns who would be coming around. So that's something that I'm considering. Yeah, maybe build some accommodation around so that when the interns come, they're actually living here and they don't need to move out and all those kinds of things. They get their everything from here. They get their food from here. They sleep over here. That minimizes the risk of us, introducing diseases on the farm. Yeah, it certainly does minimize that risk. So that is something that I'm going to be considering. Yeah, I mean, it's the only way I'm going to accept interns to come onto the farm. So proper biosecurity, a safety food dip. Yeah, so we have a food dip. This is a solar panel. It has blocked my path, so I'll just go under it. Yeah, you can see it right here. Yeah, so it's a food dip. So if someone is climbing up to go to take the ramp and get into the chicken house, someone needs to step inside there. Yeah, and then the spacing of the chicken houses to ensure that in case we have an outbreak, you guys can see. So we have these two chicken houses. There's space in between them. Another one would be the spacing between the two chicken houses in terms of the length. Yeah, so you guys can see there's a chicken house here and a chicken house there. There's a minimum distance which we keep. For me, it's 13 meters. Ideal is 15 meters, but for me, I keep 13 meters because I feel like it's long enough to provide for enough aeration. Once there's enough aeration around the farm, all the toxic gases and all those things can escape and go out. Yeah, and then we have warm air coming inside, and then we minimize the risk of introducing disease on the farm. So yes, proper biosecurity is key, and it is the main thing that you can carry out to prevent diseases from coming onto the farm. I pay a lot of attention to it. I have the guys spraying around the houses. If you can take a look around the houses are not dirty. You can see that we don't have like vegetation around the houses, despite the fact that we have grass here. If you see a bit closer to the houses themselves, yeah, as you can see, they have been like cleared up nicely. You can see that it's just soil. We don't have vegetation. We don't have like rats getting close to the chicken houses. All that is to ensure that we don't have diseases coming onto the poultry farm, and those diseases can, cause issues for us and, proper trouble for us. Yeah. So I've tried to do everything I can on the farm to ensure that we don't have diseases coming in, and that's how you prevent introduction of diseases. Number one, by vaccinating, and number two, by proper biosecurity. I hope you've found a lot of value from this video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, smash the notification bell. That way you never miss out on an upload. Catch you very soon with another video. Lots of love. Bye-bye.